So with so many wonderful writers already being represented by you, how actively are you seeking new middle grade writers?
I would never say no. If I find someone that I'm, whose writing I fall in love with, I would sign them up. So I don't need any more clients. I have about 40 or so clients, but I would never say no. I'm always looking for talent. And also, picture book writers. I love a good picture book. YA, I'm pretty fussy with YA. I don't like really dark stories, dystopian. I think there's enough of that. I want teens to have something hopeful to hang on to. It can be realistic, but I guess I would say as an agent, I am pretty fussy since I don't really need clients. With picture books, they've really the words have got to sing. They've got to really, and they've got to beg to be illustrated. They've got to be begged to be read aloud. Middle grade, it's got to be a story it's never been told before. And nonfiction, it's got to be something that's hasn't been written about before in quite the same way. But yeah, you've got to dazzle me. I'm a hard one to impress, but once I'm on board, I'm there.
So if somebody's listening to us, they want to send you a query, they're going to send that, and they're going to send the first 20 pages of their manuscript. What are you looking at first? What's going to give us our best chance at dazzling you?
A title always gets my attention. If it's an interesting title or an interesting concept, I've read a lot of picture books about the monster under the bed. I mean, that's not a new story. A kid who lives in a boring town with a boring family. I've read that before. But it's really the words that, when I was, my very first job in publishing, I was an editor at Highlights for Children, the children's magazine. And all the editors read 200 manuscripts every week, just over the transom, unsolicited manuscripts. I got really good at, as did the other editors, I'm sure, of being able to tell within a sentence if there's a real writer there, someone I want to work with. So I can usually tell in a sentence, at least the first paragraph, if there's someone who's a real writer that I want to work with. So in a query, I spent about 3 seconds reading it. I just want to see the title, the concept. If they've been published before is interesting to me, not that it makes a difference, but if I know someone's been published, I kind of know where they are in their career and I know where I can kind of jump in and help. If someone's never been published before, that's okay too. But I can usually tell right away if I want to work with someone. As I said, it's after 40 years of reading queries and having a highly attuned radar in terms of writing.
So, okay. Well, 2 questions. What about that sentence, that paragraph is going to give us away as a real writer? And then also, why ask for 20 pages if you're going to have it at the end of the paragraph?
Well, I mean, sometimes someone has a great idea and a great first sentence, sometimes even a great first chapter, but it's kind of what comes next that really tells the truth. With a picture book, of course, you can send the whole manuscript. That's fine. But, sometimes people go to writers' conferences and they hone the first chapter beautifully. And then you ask to see the manuscript and then it just doesn't hold up. They haven't workshopped the whole manuscript. They need to work on the second chapter and the third chapter, the final chapter. But I don't know, I can kind of tell. And even if something isn't perfect, I can tell if I want to work with someone. It doesn't have to be picture perfect. It doesn't have to be ready for a publisher. Because as an former editor, I know how to help you get there. But I just need to see the promise. And I need to see someone with a real gift for language. But I'm pretty good at discerning that.
Gotcha. So if the concept grabs you, the story sounds amazing, but the language is just kind of ho-hum, the writing is a little bit lackluster, do you feel that with your many years of experience as an editor, you can help reshape that into something better? Or is that not something you're interested in with a full stable of clients already?
I'm glad to work with someone, but I have to say you can't make someone who's a lackluster writer. I mean, I don't mean to be negative, but someone who just doesn't have the facility to tell a story really well. I don't know if you can teach that. I mean, I think you can improve as a writer. And I'm always glad, like at a writer's conference, to chat with writers. But I don't think you can do a paste up job and make someone a good writer. I think if there's promise, I can help make a manuscript better, but I can't make someone a writer. That's something that has to come from the writer themselves. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Sadly, there are some people who are not going to get published, or they're going to be published in a local newspaper, and that's fine too, or they're going to self-publish something for their family. That's okay. But to be a professional writer, you've got to have the ability to tell a story in a fresh way. You've got to be able to make an interesting concept really come alive. And really, this is the thing I tell writers all the time. Think about your writer, think about your audience. Are you reaching them? When you're writing a picture book, for instance, or a middle grade novel or a chapter book, picture the kids sitting around your feet, listening to you. When you read the story out loud, have you grabbed their attention? And then when you've grabbed their attention, are you holding on to their attention? That's really key. I find that a lot of writers, they kind of get into their heads and they forget about the audience. It's like being an actor. My background is musical theater. So, when you're standing up on stage, you have to think about the deaf person in the last row. You've got to think about the people in the front row. Have you grabbed their attention, or have you lost them in the first sentence? As a writer, you've got to think about your reader. And I think that's one of the key things people forget. And I'm not saying you're pandering. You don't want to use cheap tricks to get your reader's attention, but you do need to think about the reader. Are you telling a story in an interesting way? Is the pacing good to hold on to your reader? Maybe you need to have shorter chapters, or maybe you need to have, more kind of cliffhanger endings to your chapter. Anything you can do to really grab your reader. But that's really a key thing. And I think that some writers forget about that. They're in their heads, they're writing something beautiful, which is good, but you do have an audience, and you need to think about that.